There is a principle at the edge of both physics and philosophy that does not fit neatly into the tidy boxes our minds prefer. It does not bow to classical logic. It does not care for the way we slice time into past, present, and future. This principle suggests something radical, something most people intuitively feel, but few dare to truly believe: that you are not separate from what you seek, that you are not chasing a reality, but are already entangled with it. That consciousness is not confined to your skull, but radiates through and beyond space-time, connected in a web of resonance that defies conventional causality. That in the deepest layer of existence, the observer is already entangled with the observed. Quantum entanglement, once dismissed as paradox or thought experiment, is now a thoroughly verified phenomenon. Split two particles from a single event and move them light-years apart. Alter one, and the other responds, not eventually, not in milliseconds, but instantly. This alone violates the most sacred law of classical physics, that nothing moves faster than light. But entanglement does not send a signal. It does not cross space. It reveals that space is not truly separate to begin with. In the quantum domain, what appears apart is fundamentally one. It is not connection that must be made. It is unity that has been forgotten. This alone should give us pause. Because if entanglement is not merely about particles, but about systems, and if consciousness itself is part of the quantum field, then perhaps the deepest parts of your being are already entangled with the version of you that lives the life you're trying to manifest. Not theoretically, literally. What you call future may not be a distant destination. It may be a coherent signal that already exists in the field, awaiting only your attunement. Most people hear this and reduce it to metaphor. They think it sounds nice, empowering even. But this isn't New Age optimism. It's quantum mechanics, it's neuroscience, it's frequency physics. And it doesn't just change how we think about manifestation. It changes how we think about identity itself. Because if your consciousness is not bound by location, if your nervous system can act as a transmitter, and if the field responds to coherence, then the most fundamental creative act you can engage in is not doing. It is becoming. Not becoming through effort, but through alignment. Through collapsing into the version of you that already exists in the quantum field as a vibrational potential. And this collapse, the shift from potential to form, is not triggered by hope, by words, or by force. It is triggered by resonance. Resonance is the language of the field. Coherence is its syntax. The field does not hear your affirmations. It hears your alignment. And alignment does not happen in the mind alone. It is not an idea. It is a state. A synchronized frequency of thought, emotion, and biology. This is where the bridge between ancient mysticism and modern physics becomes undeniable. The mystics spoke of oneness, of inner stillness, of merging with the self beyond the self. Today, the physicist speaks of unified fields, wave function collapse, and non-locality. The language is different. The insight is the same. You are not a separate fragment wandering toward wholeness. You are already whole, but broadcasting from a fractured signal. You are not climbing toward your higher self. You are tuning toward it. The signal has always been there. It has simply been buried beneath contradiction. When people talk about manifesting their reality, they often mean striving toward an imagined outcome. But in the quantum sense, manifestation is not projection. It is entanglement recognition. You do not create from thin air. You collapse what already exists in potential. And the selector is your frequency. Not the frequency you think you have, but the one your system is actually emitting. Your subconscious patterns, your emotional baseline, your physiological state. These are not background conditions. They are the control panel of creation. This is why the journey ahead is not about adding more techniques or chasing more knowledge. It is about subtracting distortion. It is about remembering what has always been entangled with you and learning how to stabilize in the signal of that version. The version of you who already walks in peace, who already feels free, who already lives in coherence with the truth of their being. The question is no longer, how do I reach that version of me? The question is, how do I become silent enough to hear their signal? Because that signal is already broadcasting. And the moment you begin to feel it, to sense it, not just as a wish but as a recognition, you are no longer a seeker. You are a receiver, and the field begins to rearrange. This is not a poetic metaphor. This is a shift in physics, in biology, in identity. And it begins now, with one subtle remembering. You are not moving toward your future self. You are already entangled with them, and they are waiting for you to tune in. Quantum entanglement is not a metaphor. It is not speculative. It is not wishful science. It is one of the most rigorously tested and repeatedly confirmed phenomena in modern physics. And yet, its implications remain so radical, so incompatible with our intuitive understanding of space, time, and identity, that most people either dismiss it as irrelevant to daily life or distort it into spiritual cliché. But if you slow down, if you really let it in, entanglement doesn't just shift how we view the quantum world. It breaks the illusion at the core of human perception, the illusion that we are separate. When two particles become entangled, they cease to be distinct entities. They no longer possess individual, independent states. Instead, they share what physicists call a joint wave function, a mathematical expression that describes them as one unified system, regardless of how far apart they are in space. The most astonishing part? Altering the state of one particle instantly changes the state of the other. Instantly, not quickly. Not at the speed of light. Instantaneously. Even if they are light years apart. Even if no force, no information, no measurable energy has passed between them. The change occurs outside of space, outside of time. This alone undermines the foundation of classical physics, which is built on the assumption that nothing, no object, no signal, no influence, can travel faster than light. But entangled particles do not transmit. They do not travel. They do not move. They simply remain part of the same whole, a unity beneath the illusion of distance. Einstein called this spooky action at a distance, and he resisted it with every fiber of his scientific mind. Not because the math didn't work, it did, but because the implications were too disorienting. What kind of universe allows two objects to be separated by infinite space, yet act as if they are touching? What kind of reality permits instantaneous connection across galaxies? The answer is a universe where space is not what we think it is. A reality where what we call separation is not fundamental, but emergent. Where locality is not a basic feature, but a surface phenomenon, useful for navigation, but misleading at the level of truth. This is what David Bohm referred to as the implicate order, a deeper, enfolded dimension of reality, where all things are not merely interconnected, but unfolded within one another. In the implicate order, every point contains the whole. Every part echoes the totality. The observer and the observed are woven into a single process, not a relationship between two things, but an indivisible field expressing itself in multiplicity. Bohm didn't describe this to mystify science. He proposed it to resolve its deepest paradoxes. He saw clearly that the quantum world was not broken. Our model of it was. Likewise, physicist John Wheeler proposed the concept of a participatory universe, where consciousness is not outside the system observing from a distance, but is itself a fundamental actor in the unfolding of reality. No phenomenon is a real phenomenon until it is an observed phenomenon, he said. This is not idealism. This is quantum mechanics. Reality, at its most essential level, does not exist as solid objects, but as probability waves, until something observes, collapses, engages. And so we return to the mystery of entanglement. Because what becomes entangled is not just mass, or spin, or charge. It is possibility itself. It is the state of being. It is the waveform of identity. When two systems are entangled, their potential outcomes are no longer separate. They are fused. What happens to one is inseparable from what happens to the other. Their destinies are intertwined, not symbolically, but structurally. Now, pause. Step back from the physics for a moment and ask the question that changes everything. What if this applies not only to particles, but to consciousness? What if your mind, yourself, your frequency, can be entangled with another version of you, one that exists not in theory, but in the quantum field as a real, potential pattern? Imagine that every choice you haven't made, every healed version of you, every possibility that still vibrates in the field, is not some ghostly mirage, but a waveform waiting to collapse. And now imagine that one of those versions, calm, clear, coherent, expanded, is already entangled with the you listening to this now. What would that mean? It would mean the future is not ahead of you. It's beside you, vibrating in parallel, waiting for resonance. It would mean you do not need to move through space to reach it. You need to collapse into it. It would mean that the signal of your entangled self, the one who already lives the truth you seek, is pulsing gently beneath the surface of your mind, like a tuning fork vibrating in a dimension just out of reach, waiting for your nervous system to stabilize enough to feel it. That signal is not coming from a place. It is not a thing you must chase. It is not even a timeline you must create. It is a coherence you must remember. There is, quite literally, a thread connecting you to yourself across the veil of probability. A filament of vibration running outside of time, outside of space. It cannot be severed. It cannot be destroyed. It can only be forgotten. That forgetting is what we call separation. That remembering is what we call entanglement. This is not mystical poetry. This is wave function mathematics. This is the architecture of reality itself, the invisible geometry of becoming. The mind resists this, not because it is false, but because it is too free. It dissolves every boundary we were taught to believe in. It reveals that the most personal longing is already universal, that the most intimate desire is already shared, that the you who longs and the you who already is are not two. They are one wave, seen from 2 points in time. So, what collapses the wave into reality? What brings the potential into presence? Your frequency, your coherence, your signal. When the field detects a clear enough signal, one that matches the entangled version already vibrating in the implicate order, it responds. Not symbolically, not emotionally, physically. It collapses probability into experience. Not because you hoped or wished or tried, but because you tuned. This is the science beneath the silence, the physics beneath the prayer, the logic beneath the leap. Entanglement is not a concept. It is the structure of your soul's memory, and your remembering of it is the first real act of creation. We've been conditioned to believe that becoming is a process of construction, that our future identity is a structure we must build, brick by brick, step by step, through goals, plans, and constant effort. But this belief belongs to the domain of linear time and classical thinking. It presumes that what you seek does not yet exist, and that you must climb your way toward it, often with struggle. Yet, in the quantum view, this notion collapses. Because in the quantum field, becoming is not construction. It is alignment. It is not a process of fabrication. It is a process of tuning. In this model, every possible version of you, confident, healed, abundant, liberated, already exists as a wave function. Not metaphorically, but energetically. These versions are not figments of imagination. They are real, vibrating patterns encoded into the fabric of the quantum field, awaiting collapse. They are you, in different frequencies. And the version you experience, the one you wake up into every day, is not the only truth. It is simply the one you are currently tuned to. Think of identity then, not as a fixed object, but as a radio station. You don't create the station. You tune into it. You don't generate the song. You find the right frequency, and it plays through you. Your mind is not a closed generator of thought. It is a field-based receiver, constantly adjusting its signal in response to internal and external inputs. When you are tuned to fear, you receive more fear. When you are tuned to trust, your entire physiology begins to shift. You perceive what you are resonating with. This is not philosophy. It is neurobiology and frequency physics. The brain emits measurable electromagnetic waves. The heart, even more powerfully, radiates a field of coherence or dissonance depending on your emotional state. Your identity, then, is not just a psychological narrative. It is a vibrational broadcast. And here is the key insight: that broadcast selects which version of you collapses into experience. When your signal aligns with the waveform of your highest self, that version becomes accessible. Not because it is summoned from nowhere, but because the noise that once blocked it has been cleared. The collapse happens not when you try harder, but when your system stabilizes. Coherence is the catalyst. This is why so many people work endlessly to change their lives and feel no shift. They try to think new thoughts, repeat affirmations, take new actions. But underneath, the signal hasn't changed. Their core identity is still broadcasting an old frequency. I am not safe. I am not enough. I am still becoming. So the version of them that aligns with that story continues to collapse. Not because the higher self isn't available, but because the receiver is still tuned to a lower pattern. And this is also why breakthroughs often happen, not at the peak of effort, but at the depth of surrender. When striving falls away, when you stop trying to become, and instead allow yourself to feel what has already been there, your field quiets. The noise drops. The pattern stabilizes. And the version of you that was always humming quietly beneath the static suddenly becomes real. You have already met this self in glimpses, in meditation, in moments of silence, in flashes of intuition, in dreams. That wasn't imagination. That was reception, a brief moment of attunement to a different station. But for most, those moments fade because the coherence doesn't hold. The system reverts. The old signal reasserts itself, and the higher self disappears. Not because it left, but because the dial shifted. To truly collapse into a new identity, the nervous system must begin to trust the signal of that self. Your body must learn that it is safe to feel whole. Your emotions must stop expecting the past to repeat. Your thoughts must align not with fantasy, but with energetic familiarity. The future becomes real when it feels normal, not when it feels extreme. And normalcy, in this context, is simply prolonged coherence. Let this reframe the way you relate to change. You are not on a quest to become someone else. You are learning to stabilize in the signal of the self that already lives inside the field. That self is not in the future. It is in the waveform beside you, entangled and waiting. And your job is not to chase it, but to stop resisting its tone. This shift from effort to tuning is radical. It dissolves the story of inadequacy. It ends the drama of performance. It returns you to the deeper truth. That identity is not something you prove. It is something you broadcast. And if your broadcast is clear, if your system is coherent, then the quantum field has no choice but to respond. Not eventually, instantly. Because in quantum logic, time is not the mechanism. Frequency is. You are not here to force the next version of yourself into existence. You are here to receive it, embody it, and allow it to emerge as your new baseline. And this happens not in leaps, but in signals. Not in striving, but in surrender. Not in hoping, but in tuning. Your dream self is not fiction. It is a coherent pattern awaiting your coherence. In the quantum model of reality, The field does not respond to your desires. It does not reward your effort. It does not decode your intentions based on words, affirmations, or vision boards alone. It listens only to one thing: coherence. And coherence is not merely focus or positivity. It is the alignment of your entire being. When your thoughts, emotions, physiology, and energy system vibrate as one signal, the field responds, not philosophically, but electromagnetically. To understand this, we must move beyond the mind and into the body. Most people assume that their consciousness lives primarily in the brain. But in truth, your body is a symphony of electromagnetic communication. The brain emits measurable waves that vary in frequency, depending on your mental and emotional state. Beta for high alertness, alpha for relaxed focus, theta for deep intuition, and delta for dreamless sleep. But the brain is not the primary conductor of your internal signal. That role belongs to the heart. The HeartMath Institute, through decades of scientific research, has shown that the human heart produces an electromagnetic field 60 times more powerful than the brain's in amplitude, and that this field extends several feet beyond the body. But more importantly, this field reflects your emotional state. When you are in fear, frustration, anxiety, or resentment, the heart rhythm becomes erratic, disordered, and chaotic. When you are in gratitude, love, appreciation, or trust, it becomes smooth, rhythmic, and synchronized. And when the heart is coherent, it entrains the brain, meaning it pulls the brain's activity into alignment with it. This process is known as psychophysiological coherence, a state where the heart, brain, and nervous system operate in synchrony, creating a stable, resonant frequency. This state is not just good for your health, it is the state in which your electromagnetic field becomes clear. And that clarity is what the quantum field recognizes. When we speak of the field, we are referring to the unified energy substrate that underlies all physical matter, the invisible scaffolding in which potential realities exist as vibrational blueprints. These potentials are not inert. They are active, dynamic, constantly fluctuating according to the information being broadcast into them. And the most powerful signal you can send is not a command. It's a frequency of wholeness. Wholeness, in this context, means integration. No internal conflict. No contradiction between what you think, what you feel, and what your body is broadcasting. It means your nervous system is not in survival, your subconscious is not in fear, and your conscious mind is not trying to override a deeper wound. It means your system is settled, aligned, and whole. Here's the problem. Most people try to manifest from fragmentation. They speak abundance while feeling unworthy. They visualize love while bracing for abandonment. They affirm success while their nervous system is frozen in fear. And so, despite their best efforts, their signal is incoherent. The field does not respond with punishment. It responds with precision. It reflects the dominant signal, not the words you speak, but the energy you are. Let's make this concrete. Imagine a woman who deeply desires to manifest a relationship rooted in emotional intimacy. She lights candles, writes intentions, meditates on her future partner. But deep in her body is the memory of betrayal. Her heart is guarded. Her nervous system is hypervigilant. Her subconscious associates closeness with pain. So, although her mind is focused on connection, her field is broadcasting protection. And what the quantum field receives is not, "I am ready for love." It's, "Love is dangerous." And it reflects that belief not to judge her, but to show her what signal is active. This is the subtle tragedy of unconscious interference. You can do everything right on the surface and still collapse the same timeline over and over, because the field only listens to coherence. It doesn't listen to your conscious wants. It listens to the sum total of your electromagnetic broadcast. This is why HeartMath has also explored the concept of social coherence. When one person in a room enters heart-brain coherence, their field can measurably influence others around them. Heart rhythms synchronize, stress levels drop. The environment literally shifts. Why? Because coherence is contagious. The field doesn't end at your skin. You are not an isolated emitter. You are a node in a dynamic web of resonance. The frequency you stabilize in affects others, not just emotionally, but biophysically. Now apply this to your own transformation. You are not trying to convince the universe to give you something. You are learning to become the version of you who is stable enough to hold it. And stability is not found in constant activity. It is found in coherence. When your heart is open, your breath is steady, your mind is still, and your nervous system is regulated, the signal you emit is clean. That signal tells the field, I am whole. I am safe to receive. I am not asking for change. I am embodying it. And the field, precise and immediate, begins to reorganize reality around that vibration. This is why you cannot fake coherence. You cannot speak one thing while feeling another and expect collapse. You cannot perform abundance while your biology prepares for loss. You cannot chase love while your body fears it. The field is not fooled by appearances. It reads vibration, but this is also why quantum change can happen quickly. Because when your signal truly shifts, even for a moment, the entire information structure of your timeline begins to collapse into alignment. Not through force, but through resonance. Not through control, but through synchronization. When the heart leads, the brain follows. And when coherence stabilizes, the field opens. So the next time you catch yourself trying to manifest harder, ask a deeper question. Is my system coherent? Are my emotions in agreement with my thoughts? Is my body prepared to hold what I claim to want? Because if not, no technique will land. But if yes, if even for a breath your entire being aligns in one frequency, then that breath becomes a prayer the quantum cannot ignore. The field doesn't respond to want. It responds to wholeness. And wholeness begins when you stop striving to prove you're ready, and instead become the signal that you are. If coherence is the signal that the quantum field responds to, then your nervous system is the gatekeeper of that signal. It determines not only what your body feels, but what your field broadcasts. And while most people focus on changing their thoughts or emotions to shift their reality, they often overlook the one mechanism that stands between them and true collapse: the state of their nervous system. Think of the nervous system as the tuning dial for your identity. Every signal you emit, through thoughts, emotions, breath, posture, and tone, is filtered through this system. When your nervous system is calm and regulated, it acts like a clear channel. Your frequency is stable, your perception opens, and your body becomes a vessel for coherence. But when your nervous system is dysregulated, locked in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, it becomes a static field transmitter. Your electromagnetic field becomes noisy, contradictory, fragmented. And the quantum field, precise and impartial, reflects that fragmentation. Most people are not manifesting from a state of presence. They are manifesting from survival. They are visualizing their dream life with a clenched jaw, shallow breath, and a heart rate that whispers danger. They are repeating affirmations from a place of bracing. They are trying to collapse abundance while their body prepares for loss. They don't realize that the electromagnetic signature they are sending is not desire, it's defense. The sympathetic nervous system, the branch responsible for fight or flight, was designed for short bursts of response to acute threat. But in the modern world, it has become the default baseline for millions of people. Chronic stress, unresolved trauma, and emotional suppression keep the body in a near constant state of low-level vigilance. And this vigilance alters everything: digestion, immunity, hormones, brainwave activity, and, critically, the signal you are broadcasting into the quantum field. In this state, no amount of mental clarity can override the deeper signal of fear, because the body speaks louder than the mind, and the field listens to the body. This is where trauma research offers powerful insight. As Bessel van der Kolk writes in The Body Keeps the Score, traumatic memory is not just stored in thought, It is etched into sensation, posture, muscle tension, and visceral reaction. A person may not consciously remember a painful experience, but their nervous system does. And unless that somatic imprint is addressed, it will continue to emit a signal that distorts coherence. Take, for example, someone who had a past experience of success, followed by sudden loss. Consciously, they may want abundance, but if the body associates receiving with danger, if the memory of "when I rise, I fall" is still alive in the nervous system, then the body will resist the very reality the mind is trying to create. The field doesn't receive the words of hope. It receives the vibrational code of protection. This is why so many people feel stuck on their path of becoming, not because they lack intelligence, discipline, or desire, but because their nervous system has not yet felt safe enough to allow the new frequency to land. The version of reality they seek is not emotionally compatible with the state they are in, and the quantum field, rather than rewarding effort, mirrors signal. In other words, you cannot collapse a timeline of peace while your nervous system is rehearsing threat. You cannot attune to the frequency of expansion if your body is contracted in self-defense. You cannot receive a new identity if your internal landscape is still haunted by the echoes of an old one. So what's the shift? It's not more doing. It's not more effort. It's regulation. It's somatic trust. It's the slow, daily process of teaching your body that it is safe to feel joy, safe to receive, safe to relax into wholeness. That might mean breathwork. It might mean cold exposure. It might mean walking barefoot in the grass, or placing your hand over your heart and saying nothing, just listening. It might mean releasing the old story not from your thoughts, but from your spine. When your body no longer anticipates collapse, it begins to allow arrival. And when that arrival becomes embodied, not just understood, but felt, the field responds. Not through miracle, but through mechanics. The nervous system is not just a highway for signals. It is the filter that determines which signals can be stabilized long enough to become real. Until it is soothed, the field cannot collapse a new version of you. Because no version of you can arrive in full coherence if your body still thinks it's unsafe to be you. This is the root of energetic mismatch. Not desire, but dysregulation. Not failure, but physiology. The gatekeeper is not your willpower, it is your safety. So the next time you feel blocked, stop asking what else you must visualize. Ask instead, what part of me is still bracing? What signal is my body sending beneath my words? What memory is my posture still holding? Because when your nervous system finally believes it is safe to be here, now, the field stops protecting you from your own expansion, and it starts letting it in. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Carl Jung's words remain as relevant in the age of quantum mechanics as they were in the depths of early analytical psychology. Because beneath every spiritual effort to manifest, every conscious affirmation, every act of willful change, there is a silent broadcaster. One that determines whether the signal you send into the field is coherent or chaotic. That broadcaster is the subconscious mind. Most people are taught to associate the mind with thought. But in reality, only a small fraction of your cognition is conscious. Neuroscientific studies estimate that over 95% of your decisions, reactions, and behaviors are driven not by conscious intention, but by unconscious programming, patterns stored deep in the limbic system, shaped by early experience, and running automatically without your awareness. In the quantum model of creation, this poses a problem. Because the field does not respond to your declared goals, it responds to your dominant frequency. And the dominant frequency is not shaped by what you say you believe. It is shaped by what your subconscious has rehearsed as truth, often since childhood. The subconscious mind does not speak in language. It speaks in patterns. It is the realm of implicit memory, of emotional resonance, of embodied reaction. It carries the imprint of every moment your nervous system interpreted as significant, especially those moments that occurred before you had the cognitive capacity to interpret them logically. Before age 7, your brain is primarily in a theta state, a highly suggestible frequency associated with imagination, intuition, and deep learning. During these years, you are not just learning behaviors. You are absorbing beliefs. Not taught, absorbed. If your parents modeled scarcity, you internalized scarcity. If love was conditional, you learned to perform for connection. If emotions were unsafe, you learned to suppress them. These programs didn't form because you were weak. They formed because your system was adapting. Your subconscious was trying to keep you safe, even if the environment was not. And once those patterns were established, they became your energetic baseline. You might grow older, gain knowledge, pursue healing. But unless these deep codes are addressed, they continue to emit the same signal. Not because you're broken, but because you're broadcasting from an outdated frequency. This is the silent sabotage so many encounter in their spiritual work. They set intentions, but they don't trust them. They visualize success, but their bodies brace for loss. They declare, "I am worthy," but every cell in their being still holds the imprint of shame. The field, always honest, reflects the dominant vibration, not to punish, but to mirror what's active. And what's active is not your surface desire. It's your foundational code. Understanding this changes the game. It moves you from self-blame to self-inquiry. It's not, "Why can't I manifest?" It's, "What belief is broadcasting beneath my awareness?" Because once you uncover the unconscious signal, you can begin to rewire it, not through force, but through awareness, repetition, and embodied emotion. Modern neuroscience calls this neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new connections and overwrite old ones. But neuroplasticity requires more than information. It requires safety. It requires feeling. It requires coherence. You must feel the new belief is true. Not just think it, but experience it viscerally. This is where visualization, meditation, and heart-based practices become powerful tools. Not because they create something out of nothing, but because they help stabilize a new broadcast, one that the quantum field can finally hear. But more than practice, it requires compassion, because these subconscious patterns were not chosen, they were inherited. Many of your deepest limitations began long before you were capable of resisting them. Some came from your family line, others from cultural trauma. Some may even be epigenetically transmitted across generations. You are not just working with your story, you are working with a legacy. And yet, within that truth lies your liberation. Because once you recognize that the broadcast isn't personal, it's programmed, you can begin to separate yourself from the signal. You can become the observer, the editor, the architect of a new frequency. Not by erasing the past, but by choosing which parts of it still serve your expansion. This is what Jung meant by making the unconscious conscious. It is not an intellectual exercise. It is an energetic reorganization, a reweaving of your field around a new core identity. And it begins with this remembering: your field isn't broken. It's just broadcasting your oldest code. You don't need to fight it. You need to update it. You don't need to override your wounds. You need to witness them until they dissolve. And when the signal shifts, when the subconscious no longer whispers lack, fear, or danger, the field no longer mirrors those patterns. It begins to mirror your truth. And your truth is not your history. It is your coherence. It is your presence. It is the vibration that remains when all borrowed beliefs fall away. The quantum field is waiting for that version of you. And that version is not far. It is beneath the programming, already humming, already whole, already ready to be lived. The human brain cannot always tell the difference between what is vividly imagined and what is physically experienced. This is not a poetic exaggeration. It's a neurological fact. When you engage in detailed visualization that includes emotion, sensory data, and embodied feeling, your brain responds as though the event is truly happening. Neurons fire. Hormones shift. The body releases corresponding chemistry. The electromagnetic field changes. And the quantum field receives a new signal. This is the foundation of mental reprogramming. Not just reciting positive phrases, but generating a felt reality so coherent, so vivid, that your entire system begins to believe it's already true. When that belief stabilizes, not in your thoughts, but in your physiology, you begin to collapse a different version of yourself into form. Because the field does not respond to repetition alone. It responds to coherence. This is why so many affirmations fall flat. People say them daily, even hourly. I am abundant. I am worthy. I am enough. But they do so while holding tension in the body, doubt in the heart, and emotional residue in the subconscious. The result? A fragmented signal. The words say one thing, the energy says another, and the field, precise, unfiltered, responds to the dominant vibration, not the declared one. True reprogramming begins when the subconscious, the emotional body, and the nervous system are brought into agreement. That's where imagination becomes not a tool of escape, but a portal of embodiment. Joe Dispenza calls this broadcasting into the field. He teaches that thoughts are the electrical charge and emotions are the magnetic field. Together, they create a coherent signature. But if you think abundance and feel fear, the signal is contradictory. If you visualize love while your body braces for loss, the signal is unstable. It is not the affirmation itself that matters. It's the emotional coherence behind it. So, how do you reprogram the mind at the level the quantum field can receive? You don't start with words. You start with state. You start with regulation. You create a container of safety inside your nervous system. You breathe deeply. You slow down. You center your awareness in the body. From there, you begin to generate a new reality. Not by imagining something distant, but by remembering what it feels like to already be it. Close your eyes and bring to mind a version of yourself who is not trying to manifest, but who already lives the life you desire. Let that version appear not as an ideal, but as a present signal. What are they wearing? How do they speak? How do they move? But more importantly, what does it feel like in their chest, their breath, their spine? How do they relate to time, to uncertainty, to joy? Now allow your body to mimic their state. Let your breath deepen. Relax your jaw. Let your shoulders drop. Let your face soften. Imagine walking as they walk, speaking with their tone, receiving the day as they would. This is not make-believe. This is neurological rehearsal. And the more you rehearse this state with consistency, the more it becomes your baseline. Your subconscious begins to treat it as familiar. Your nervous system begins to trust it. Your field begins to stabilize around it. This is the mechanism of reprogramming. It's not about trying harder to be someone else. It's about removing the emotional resistance to being who you already are in potential. You're not conjuring from thin air. You're collapsing probability. You're selecting a waveform that has always existed and giving your body permission to live there. That's why embodiment matters. You can't rewire the brain without involving the body. Movement, breath, tone, posture, all of these feed back into the nervous system. If you speak from confidence, your voice tells your brain a new story. If you walk with presence, your spine tells your heart it is safe. If you allow yourself to feel gratitude in your gut, your field becomes magnetized to receive. This is not abstract, it's biochemical, and it's measurable. Studies show that even short periods of coherent visualization combined with elevated emotion can alter gene expression, reduce stress hormones, and enhance immune function. This is not just a tool for personal growth. It is a biological reset, a restructuring of the electromagnetic field you carry, and therefore, the quantum feedback you receive. But coherence requires consistency. You can't visit this state once and expect your identity to change. You must return to it often, not as performance, but as recalibration. Like tuning an instrument before each song, you attune your system to the frequency of the version you wish to become, not because it isn't real, but because it's been drowned out by an older signal. Each session of coherent embodiment, no matter how brief, strengthens the new pattern, and eventually, the subconscious accepts it as normal. That's the turning point. When the future no longer feels distant, when abundance doesn't feel foreign, when love feels safe to receive. That's when the field begins to reflect not your desire, but your embodiment. And the timeline of your new self collapses, not with fanfare, but with certainty. So the next time you speak an affirmation, pause and feel. Does my body believe this? Does my breath agree? Am I broadcasting from wholeness or from lack? Let that question guide your practice, not toward control, but toward coherence. Because mental reprogramming is not about convincing the universe. It's about reminding your own system that the signal has changed, and letting the field do the rest. We often hear the phrase, act as if, and are encouraged to behave as though our desired reality is already here. But acting implies performance. It suggests wearing a costume over an unchanged core. You might dress confidently, speak bold words, or force yourself to smile. Yet beneath the surface, your physiology, your subconscious, and your electromagnetic field remain linked to the old pattern. This creates a split. The outer behavior says one thing, while the inner frequency broadcasts another. Embodying the signal, by contrast, is not performance. It is integration. It is not about pretending to be someone else for a moment. It is about aligning your entire system, mind, heart, body, and energy, so that your identity, the observer, and the act of collapse become one. In quantum terms, identity is not a label you wear. It is the waveform you occupy. The observer effect teaches us that observation collapses a range of probabilities into a single outcome. But if the observer is not steady, if it is fractured by contradiction, then the collapse reflects that fragmentation. When you embody the signal, your identity, your act of observing, and the collapse of possibility into reality occur through the same coherent vibration. You become the selector and the selected simultaneously. This principle transforms Neville Goddard's timeless teaching to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Goddard described imagination as a creative power, urging practitioners to dwell in the emotion of already having what they long for. For decades, this has remained a poetic invitation, waiting for scientific language to catch up. Today, we can explain it in terms of wave mechanics and neurophysiology. To assume the feeling is to stabilize the electromagnetic and neural patterns that correspond to your desired state. It is to generate a unified field of intention and emotion so clear that the quantum probabilities outside your body collapse into alignment with it. Imagine your identity as a radio transmitter and the quantum field as the broadcast spectrum. Acting as if is like playing a recording through a broken speaker. The sound is recognizable, but the signal is distorted by static and feedback. Embodying the signal is like upgrading to a high-fidelity system. The transmission is pure, the frequency matches the receiver, and the original waveform comes through unaltered. In practical terms, embodying the signal means you do not merely imitate the external markers of success. You inhabit the internal landscape of that success. You cultivate the neurochemical state of your fulfilled self, the heart rhythm of your abundant self, the synchronized brainwave patterns of your creative self. You shift from surface imitation to deep resonance. Quantum logic offers the framework for this shift. In the quantum universe, identity equals observer equals collapser. The moment you observe, you collapse a probability into experience. But if the observer, the sum of your belief systems, emotional baselines and somatic patterns, is unstable, the collapse produces a reality that mirrors that instability. To change your reality, you must change the observer. You must become the waveform that collapses the future you intend. This goes beyond wishful thinking. It is a technical operation of coherence. How do you perform this operation? First, recognize that coherence is not a static state. It is a sustained dance between neural circuits and electromagnetic rhythms. It requires habitual calibration. You begin each day by anchoring in your future self, not through effort, but through immersion. You breathe into the pattern of your fulfilled life. You recreate the eye focus, the body posture, and the heartbeat of your highest identity. You generate the neural oscillations of calm focus in alpha and theta, and you allow your heart to move into a coherent rhythm of appreciation. In this field of alignment, you are not asking the universe to change. You are activating the version of you that has already changed and letting the field mirror that. Second, hold yourself accountable to fidelity, not force. Force is a signal of resistance. It arises when you push against what is. Fidelity is a signal of integrity. It arises when your inner world matches the version you wish to live. Force fractures your field. Fidelity deepens it. Every time you catch yourself pushing, pausing to inquire whether your physiology is aligned with your intention allows you to reset. Over time, these resets become a sustained frequency rather than occasional moments of clarity. Third, integrate displacement practices into your routines. Whether it is walking in silence while focusing on the felt sense of freedom, or engaging in heartfelt journaling that evokes the posture of your future self, these practices are not separate from your reality work. They are the work. They recalibrate the neural pathways that house your self-concept. They recondition the limbic system to accept abundance as normal. They signal to the quantum field that you are no longer testing its responsiveness, but fulfilling your role as the coherent observer. Finally, remember that collapse happens in moments of sustained coherence. It is not a lightning bolt. It is the gradual tuning of a system until the frequency of your future self becomes the dominant signal. When the field no longer detects separation between the observer and the observed. When your identity is indistinguishable from the desired outcome, the waveform snapshot of your dream reality arises seamlessly in your experience. This is the operation of becoming the signal. The path from act as if to embody the signal is the path from imitation to integrity. It is the journey of aligning every aspect of your being with the waveform that carries your highest potential. It is the quantum identity shift, where you are no longer chasing the future, but collapsing it through true resonance. And as you prepare for the final practice, carry this truth with you. The collapse is not a result of force, but fidelity. You've heard the words. You've followed the logic. You've understood the mechanics. But this journey is not complete until knowledge becomes embodiment. Until the theory stops living in your mind and starts breathing through your body. Because the quantum field does not respond to information. It responds to integration. So pause. Set everything down, if only for a moment. Let this be a space of return, not to a task, but to a truth that lives beneath every effort. You are not separate from your future. You are not constructing a new self. You are uncovering the signal of one that's always been here, waiting for coherence. Take a slow breath, the kind that doesn't try to change anything, just allows everything to settle. Feel your weight drop into your seat. Feel the air touching your skin. Feel the pulse of your body anchoring you in now. Let your attention drift inward, not to escape the outer world, but to return to the signal that shapes it. Now imagine, not from your head, but from your field, that version of you who has already made the shift. Not perfect, not enlightened, just present, aligned, real. They wake in peace, They move with intention. They speak with clarity. They live from the center of their being, not the edges of their anxiety. What does their breath feel like? How do they hold their spine? What kind of energy follows them into a room? Let that frequency become tangible, not through thought, but through sensation. Feel your body begin to reflect their posture. Feel your breath match theirs. Feel your tone soften into resonance. You're not watching them, you're syncing with them. You're remembering a version of you who was never lost, only tuned out. This is not visualization as performance. This is vibrational contact. You are not fantasizing. You are calibrating. You are not willing change. You are allowing access. And the more fully you let this state arrive in your physiology, the more deeply the field receives your signal as truth. So now ask your body, can I let this be safe? Can I let this be simple? Can I let this be now? Because the truth is, the future you're chasing has never been far. It's been humming in the background, sending invitations, waiting for you to become quiet enough, clear enough, whole enough to recognize the tone. And when you do, as you're doing now, the collapse begins. Not loud, not dramatic, but precise, cellular, real. Let this be the start of a new rhythm in your day. When you rise in the morning, don't reach for your to-do list. Reach for your signal. Breathe before thought. Before bed, don't analyze your progress. Return to coherence. Let your heart be the compass and your breath the bridge. Walk through the world as the version of you just touched. Not because you're trying to convince anyone, but because you've decided to no longer abandon yourself. Let the way you move through conversations carry this frequency. Let the pauses between your words hum with stability. Let your nervous system become the proof of your timeline. You don't need to perform change. You only need to stop contradicting it. This is embodiment. Not a destination, but a frequency you keep returning to until it becomes your default. And from there, everything organizes. Because the field doesn't respond to how much you want it. It responds to how much you match it. So feel this moment one last time. Not as a peak, but as a practice. The feeling of already. The posture of presence. The frequency of wholeness. And as you walk forward, remember, you are not manifesting it. You are collapsing into it. If something within you feels calmer now, if your body has softened even slightly, if there's more stillness between your thoughts, more spaciousness in your chest, more silence in the room around you, then it's working. Not because you forced a breakthrough, but because you tuned into a frequency your system already knows. This quiet is not absence. It is confirmation. The field has received your signal, and something has already begun to reorganize. You don't need to see the evidence right away. The most powerful shifts rarely arrive with fireworks. They arrive in the way you breathe, in the way you pause before reacting, in the way you speak to yourself when no one else is listening. The old version of you, the one who doubted, chased, reached, has started to dissolve. Not through effort, but through coherence. This is the inflection point. The moment the future stops feeling distant and begins to feel familiar. Not because the world changed, but because you did. And as you stabilize in that signal, as you keep returning to it, day after day, the external must catch up. The quantum field doesn't need more performance from you. It needs your presence. And when that presence carries no contradiction, no static, no split, time dissolves. And the self that once felt far away is already here. If this message met you where you are, if something in you softened, remembered, or realigned, then stay with it. This space isn't just a video. It's a frequency. And if you'd like to keep collapsing into that signal with others who are walking the same path, you're invited to subscribe, not to follow, to attune, to keep returning to the version of you that already knows. Because the field is listening. And now, so are you.